Today I want to talk about Fly on the Wall by AC/DC. This is one of those divisive albums. A lot of people don't like it. It has really bad production. The vocals are very muddy. But I think it deserves another chance because the songs are actually pretty good if you listen to it for what it is. So that's what I want to talk about today. Because a lot of people talk about AC/DC, their great albums, like High Voltage, Highway to Hell, Back in Black, For Those About to Rock, even The Razor's Edge. But there was a period in the 80s where they released a few albums that kind of get overlooked. And this was one of them. This was released right smack in the middle of the 80s. So that's what I want to talk about today. As always, I'm going to show you my CD. I record that separately, so I'm going to go into that section next. But let me also tell you what I'm going to talk about. I want to talk about the recording process and some of the singles, the music videos, because they released a series of music videos that are all taking place like in this bar. So that's pretty cool. And they released this VHS. And there's also this controversy with a serial killer, which isn't directly related to this album, but it happened in the media while this album was being released, or while this album was out. So I want to talk about that as well, because I think that affected the reception of this album as well. So I'm going to try to get to all of that. So first, let me show you the CD, and then we'll move on. Well, let's take a look at the CD. I bought this one used, and I think it's one of the originals. So it was a pretty good price. I grabbed it, and I thought I need to have this album because I love AC/DC. So here it is. Here's the songs. It has 10 different songs. So that's pretty cool. Produced by Angus and Malcolm Young, which I'll talk about later in more detail. And there's the Atlantic Records and all that. So let me open it up. Here's the CD with the standard Atlantic Records one. And this is the older version. This is the 1985 version. So I guess I'm pretty sure it came out when this album was released, because by 1985, I think most albums were getting the CD release, but maybe it came out a little afterwards. That I didn't really investigate too much. And here's the booklet. It's pretty cool, just mostly lyrics, not really a lot of pictures, or not any pictures actually. It's just all lyrics, and then it has the band Simon Wright on drums. That's pretty interesting. And there's the music video where I was talking about in the AC/DC VHS. And there's just a logo, and there's some band photos on the back. So let me get back to the video. So it's kind of an interesting album. I want to talk about the recording process first, because this came right after Flick of the Switch. Another one that critics don't like, some fans don't like it. They didn't like it back then, but I think it's one of those albums that has held up pretty well. But back in 1985, they wanted to release the follow-up to Quick as a Switch, and Angus and Malcolm took over the production themselves, so they had full control of this entire album. So that is another thing that affected it. It was also recorded in Montreux, Switzerland, and that's the same place as Deep Purple's Machine Head, as far as I know. So that's interesting there. It's more of a gritty, stripped down sound. Vocals are more in the background. The guitars are more up front. The mix is very muddy, so that was one of the main problems. But their intention was to keep it authentic. They didn't want to have this like glossy 80s type of album. They wanted something raw and just like pure rock and roll. So that's what they were going for. So we have some good songs here. We have the title track, Fly on the Wall. That kind of sets a tone. It's like the dirty mid-tempo rocker, going into Shake Your Foundations, which is a really good song. It's catchy. And it was actually remixed for the Stephen King's Maximum Overdrive soundtrack. And that's like a better version of it. It sounds a little different, so that one probably sounds a little cleaner. And another underrated track is called Danger. It's kind of a moody, intense type of track. I like that one. Maybe my favorite, Sink to Pink, probably the catchiest song, and it has lots of catchy riffs and a lot of the innuendo in the lyrics. I mean, just the title alone, you can imagine what it's all about. And then a couple deep cuts, which are pretty good, like Back in Business and First Blood. Just straight up AC/DC, Playing with Girls and Stand Up, more catchier with these catchy pop choruses, and Send for the Man, kind of like a slow bluesy Closer, which is kind of an underrated gem, something that people don't talk about too much. But what's interesting about this is that AC/DC made this full-length VHS that they released around the time called Fly on the Wall, the video, and it had 5 songs, so Fly on the Wall, Danger, Sing to Pink, Stand Up, and Shake Your Foundations. And they're all this one story. It's set in this rock club, and there's all these different things going on as they play the song. So it was something that the critics didn't like, but it gave the songs a lot of visibility on MTV. And Sing to Pink was the standout single that got a lot of airplay. So it's pretty cool looking back that has all these music videos. So now I want to talk about a controversy called the Night Stalker murders. So back in 1985, Richard Ramirez, a serial killer known as the Night Stalker, was linked to AC/DC in the media. So he left an AC/DC hat at a crime scene, and it referenced the song Nightcrawler from the Highway to Hell album, that one that had the drawing back in there. Now, the tabloids accused AC/DC of satanic influence. They called it an Antichrist, Devil's Child, and it was right in the middle of the satanic panic because this was when they were trying to promote the Fly on the Wall album. So even though this event is not directly related to Fly on the Wall, it happened like while it was out. So that really affected how this was seen. And also AC/DC kind of got mixed together with all those glam metal bands that were dominating MTV at the time. So it was a big controversy. And I think looking back, it's interesting, although at the time, it probably hurt the band. But I think this album deserves a second chance because it shows AC/DC's refusal to compromise. They did what they want. They weren't chasing trends. At that time, all these like rock and metal bands were using all these synths and trying to do new wave. But AC/DC were like, no, we're just doing what we're doing. We're using the guitars and we're just going to play this hard rock and roll. So the album is raw, it's gritty, but it's not an 80s type of album because when you think of the 80s, you think of the glossy production and that big sound. It's the opposite of that. This album also has some good songs, the strong riffs like Sing to Pink, Shake Your Foundations, Back in Business. They're really good songs. And Brian Johnson's vocals are good, even though they're mixed lower and you can't hear them as well, but they're still very good. Malcolm's rhythm guitar is another thing that sounds really good, some of his best playing. And it's one of those albums, you just kind of have to accept it for what it is. It's just one of those underdogs in their catalog. And it's not a classic, but it's one that has gained a cult following. For example, I've seen rankings. I know there's one channel, he did an AC/DC ranking, and he actually put this at number 1. So that's interesting. So I know this album does have its fans. It's also kind of like this transitional album where they released a few albums in the mid-'80s that really didn't do well, and then they led to the comeback with The Razor's Edge in 1990, which I actually just did a video on my other channel, my main channel, JC Rock and Metal Reviews. So I'm going to link that in the video description if you want to check that out. But definitely, it's worth another listen. Angus Young even defends it. He just thinks it's one of those back to basics types of albums. It just captured the band at the time, and they didn't want to follow trends. They just wanted to do what they wanted and just release an album. They released the album that they wanted to. So to wrap this up, it's definitely overshadowed by the weak production and the controversy and the bad timing, but the songs are there. So it has lots of underrated gems, and it just shows AC/DC staying true to themselves. So definitely give it another chance, and it's definitely a good album to check out. The songs are great, and just listen to it. You probably have an old CD of it somewhere lying around. So check it out, and that is all. So thanks for watching. I'll stick another video here, but you can also check out my video description for my video on the Razor's Edge because that was on a different channel and sometimes it's hard to link them in the end screen. But if not, I'll put another AC/DC video right here, which is about Power Up, a tribute to Malcolm Young, which is another really good video I did. I did this on this channel here where I show you my vinyl. So you can check that out, and let me just wrap it up. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. See you in the next one.